hello everyone, and welcome to Proline. It's the first week of the NFL Preseason, the Hall of Fame game coming up on Sunday between the Dolphins and the Cowboys. I'm John Cranton in Las Vegas, joined by Jeff Saad, who runs Las Vegas Sports Services. We're going to be looking at that Hall of Fame game. We've got some preseason betting tips for you. We're also going to hear from our man on the street, Jim Feist. But first, Jeff, tell everyone about your preseason NFL special.
Well, you're going to get the entire preseason, all the five-star players, edge winners, for a total of only $19. All you have to do is call LVSS at 1-866-575-8916. Get the entire preseason, all 4 weeks, five-star plays every day, just $19 total. Call LVSS 1-866-575-8916.
Okay, we got the Hall of Fame game coming up on Sunday, but before we get into that, let's tell everybody about some preseason betting tips from a Las Vegas sports betting point of view. Jeff, you've been doing this for a long time. What are some of the things that stand out this time of the year, which is a little bit different from the regular season?
Well, it's totally different. Everything you handicap, the way you handicap in the preseason is exactly the opposite of what you do in the regular season. The preseason, the best thing about it is that the coaches, most of the time, will tell you who's going to play. They're going to tell you the quarterback rotation and how long the starters are going to play. So that's obviously very valuable information. Some of the quarterback rotations can make a big difference. If you have a clear starter and the other ones don't have much of a chance, and you find out the starters are only going to play one series, then you have to figure that into your handicapping. Like if you have, let's say you have a starter, then you have a backup, and the third and fourth guys are battling for the third job. If that third quarterback gets a lot of playing time, or you think is going to get a lot of playing time, you could take that into consideration. So you have to. In the preseason, the more information, the better. If you go to the newspapers or the websites or whatever, see what the coaches are saying, and also you can tell by the coaches' quotes how much they actually want to win the game. They could say something like, "We played terrible last week. I don't care if it's preseason. We're going to go out there and try to win this game." Things like that, and those all those things put together can figure into the handicapping and make a big difference, John.
Okay, another thing to keep in mind is a home field play, because it's very much overvalued by the public and many times by odds makers, because you know what the coaching staff is looking at. They are focused first on talent evaluation, the health of their players, and very simple game plans much of the time. And home field can be something that is vastly overvalued. Now, it's been on a roller coaster of late, but particularly in week 4 of the preseason, when the teams care the less about that game, home field has been somewhat overvalued. Now, last year in week 4, the home team went 14-2 straight up, 9-7 against the spread. Very good, but that's not the norm either, because 2 years ago the home team in week 4 was just 7-9 straight up, 6-10 against the spread. And most of the time you find the home team favored in that week 4, and it's a game that the coaching staff doesn't really care about. They put their worst players out there because they want to keep them healthy, because the first week of the regular season is on deck. You look back at the previous 4 years before that, from 2 weeks ago, it was actually, if you bet on the visiting team over that 4-year stretch, in week 4, the visiting team went 29-17-1 against the spread. So be very careful about overvaluing home field in preseason. Any other tips, Jeff, that you see stand out?
Also, if two teams are playing in the preseason and they're going to play again in the regular season, especially early in the regular season, you might see a game where they don't show too much, and the scoring won't be a lot. The total could be, they might put a line of 35 or something like that, and even then it could be a good underplay. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Also, it's the third game of the preseason that traditionally most of the starters play for into the third or fourth quarters. So that's another thing to think about. The fourth week, as you said, is usually players that aren't going to make the team anyway. And the first 2 weeks could be the starters could play a couple of series, or they could play a couple of quarters. So you just have to make sure you find out, or try to find out before the game, how long the starters are going to play, and especially with the quarterbacks, yeah.
And, of course, one other thing to keep in mind would be the coaches. Do they care about the game, or are they just evaluating the talent? And historically, when you look at the coaches, there are some things that are very stark. First of all, coaching is essential in football, college and pro football, more than any other sport. And the reason is you've got so many players that have to be taught, game plans have to be taught, practice, you have to work individually with each one, you have to map out the roles. So coaches, competent coaches, which are rare, can make a big difference in football far more than any other sport. And look at Bill Belichick. In preseason, 37-28 straight up, 35-27-1 against the spread. Washington, Redskins, they surprised many by winning the division last year. Well, Mike Shanahan, since he's been in Washington, he's 6-2 straight up and against the spread in preseason, and that's nothing new going back to his days in Denver. His total August record is phenomenal, 49-28 straight up, 43-29-2 against the spread. Other coaches such as Andy Reid, who's in Kansas City now, his track record in August has been terrible, and many times he has admitted, I'm more interested in looking at what I got than trying to win the game. So be very careful about examining coaches. Mike Tomlin of the Steelers, a younger coach, he started 13-4 straight up and against the spread as a coach with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and extended that to 16-5 straight up, 12-9. Okay, before we get to the Hall of Fame game coming up on Sunday, let's check in with our man on the street, Jim Feist. Jim, it's hot on the Vegas strips and in the sports books, isn't it?
The strip isn't the only thing that's hot, and believe me, it's hot. It must be 125 degrees on the strip today. It's football season, and I've been beating the books for over 40 years. This is the best time of year. Got to ask you a question. Were you with me last year when I won my NFL Game of the Year? That's right, the New York Giants. They were a 4-point favorite over the Saints. They won. They crushed 52-17. If you want games like that, let's go back to 2011. NFL Game underdog. Game of the Year underdog with the Chargers. They were an underdog to the Ravens. They won the game 34-14. My NFL Game of the Year since 1995 is 13-4-1. Since 1995, 13 winners, 4 losses, and 1 tie. This kind of information is available for you. Even the preseason, 14-7 the last 2 preseasons with my high roller Platinum Club releases. Now, right now I have a very special offer, a monster special. 4 weeks of NFL preseason, including my preseason Game of the Year, plus the first week of college football, the rest of baseball through the World Series, and for those high rollers out there, Platinum game going tonight, all this for $29, and the Sunday night Hall of Fame game. The only thing holding you back from making money, from winning, from cashing in, and from collecting each week is to make a phone call. 1-866-841-1655. Back to you, John.
All right, thanks, Jim. Okay, Jeff, let's take a look at the Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio. Coming up Sunday, you got the Dolphins playing the Cowboys. These teams actually did meet last year in preseason, although it was in Week 4. Dallas won the game at home 30-13. It was 20-6 at the half. And the numbers weren't pretty for Miami as Dallas rolled up 404 yards. Miami had just 243. And Dallas had a whopping 238 yards rushing, 5.9 yards per carry. Clearly a game that Miami didn't give a hoot about. And they also had some quarterback problems. Were they playing possum that game, or was that just the beginning of a rebuilding program for the Dolphins?
Well, they didn't give a hoot about the whole preseason. They were 0-4 last year, straight up and against the spread. And they lost 27 at home to Tampa, 23-17 at Carolina. They lost 23-6 at home to the Falcons, and then 30-13 in that game at Dallas. This year should be different because there's more pressure on Coach Philbin to put a winning team out there, and he also wants to give his fans some optimism going into the regular season. So you might see a more inspired Dolphin team this preseason than as compared to last preseason. Ryan Tannehill is a quarterback. Everybody's high on him. The team likes him. The coaches love him. Last year he was adequate. He threw 12 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, which is, of course, he was a rookie. That's pretty much normal, but he threw for more than almost 3,300 yards. He also picked up Mike Wallace, wide receiver from the Steelers. Last year he caught 64 passes for 836 yards. They were 26th in passing last year, 17th in rushing, but Wallace will help that out a little bit. He'll go deep. As far as last year, there was more short passes. They, of course, lost Reggie Bush, but the offensive line lost Jake Long. They picked up Tyson Clabo, and also, they picked up tight end Justin Keller. So the defense was good against the run. They were ranked 13th last year. They struggled in pass coverage, 27th against the pass. They picked up a couple cornerbacks, Jamar Taylor, Will Davis. They have then they picked up a 6-year veteran quarterback, Brett Grimes from Atlanta, who was injured most of last year. Last preseason, as I said, 0-4 straight up against the spread. The quarterback rotation is Tannehill, Pat Devlin, and Matt Moore. Last year against Dallas, Matt Moore was 4 of 12 for 49 yards. Tannehill was 5 of 7 for 35 yards. This game, usually the Hall of Fame game doesn't really, it's not really a big game for the fans. They don't really play the stars don't play a lot of minutes. Sometimes you want to look and see which team has more incentive to win as far as getting their team ready for the season, also selling tickets for their fans, because like an example was 2007, Mike Tomlin's first year. Pittsburgh was in the Hall of Fame game. They won that game easily. Mike Tomlin was a first-year coach. He wanted to get off on, so a good start. So those are the kind of things you might want to look at. Last year, the Saints wanted to prove that they still had a good team even with all those bizarre things that were happening. So this year, I think Miami wants to, after last year's performance in the preseason, and plus the second year of Coach Philbin, I think they really want to give a good showing in the preseason. So that might be something you want to look at, John.
Okay, I'll take a look at the Dallas Cowboys. I find it difficult to back them in this scenario because they went with the quarterback, Stephen McGee, much of last preseason. However, he's not here anymore, and what they have for rotation, you get Tony Romo, who's not going to play much, Kyle Orton, good veteran, but beyond that, you got Nick Stevens. He's a rookie from Tarleton State, and Dalton Williams, another rookie from Akron, so be very careful with the Cowboys. They also have some changes on defense. Monte Kiffin comes in to run the defense, and he's changing it from a 3-4 into a 4-3 Tampa 2 cover scheme. So this defense, which underachieved last year, has a lot of new things to look at. Dallas, being a public team, was a money-burning 6-10 against the spread last regular season. And during preseason, they really didn't show much. They beat Oakland in the very first preseason game, week 1 last year, but it wasn't impressive. 3-0 victory. They only had 202 total yards of offense. The offense was just 2 of 10 on third down. It was a hugely sloppy game with Dallas committing penalties on a couple of punts and had to settle for a long field goal try, and that was it for the game. And the offense didn't show anything. It didn't produce. And keep this in mind, Dallas, both these teams actually are going to be playing 5 preseason games. That's hard enough. But Dallas is in worse shape as all their first 3 preseason games are not even going to be at home. So you got this one in Canton. The next 2 games, one's at Oakland, one's at Arizona. So this team's going to be road weary. It's a very tough start for the preseason for Dallas. And when I look at Dallas since 2010, back then they played in the Hall of Fame game too, and they won, but it was a low-scoring game, 16-7, and it was actually a miserable, ugly game. There were a total of 16 penalties, 5 turnovers, 9 sacks, and both teams combined to go 9 of 30 on third down. So clearly the offenses in that Hall of Fame game for Dallas and Cincinnati were not ready to play. And when I look at Dallas on the road in preseason since 2010, they average only 12 points per game. So that's the way I'm looking at this Hall of Fame game. Neither team's going to show anything. You're going to see more field goals than scoring, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this one slip under the total. Okay, let's take a look at some teams with good quarterback depth. Jeff, who do you see as standing out as possibly having an edge or possibly having limited edges to go against?
In the preseason, well, the Giants, of course, are obviously Eli Manning. If he doesn't, he'll start play a few series, and David Carr comes in, and then Curtis Painter. So the Giants have experienced quarterbacking all the way down to their second backup. Chargers, another good team that has pretty much Phillip Rivers, although Phillip Rivers last couple of years has looked pretty bad actually. But his backup is Charlie Whitehurst, who is adequate. The Titans, Jake Locker. I was talking to you about before the show. Jake Locker is on the cover of one of the preseason publications. I'm not sure why. Of all the players, they picked Jake Locker. But anyway, his backup is Ryan Fitzpatrick, who has a lot of experience. And the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger, his backup is Bruce Gradkowski. And after that, John Parker Wilson, Landry Jones. So some of these teams have decent quarterback rotations here as far as preseason is concerned. When the regular season starts, it all changes because most of those backups aren't going to be playing anyway. But for the preseason, you want to look and see who's going to play after that starter goes out, John.
You don't think that Jake Locker has got a shot at MVP of the season?
No, I can't figure out this. Of all the players, Jake Locker's on the cover. I don't know what the deal is here. So.
Well, there's a couple of teams that have really good quarterback depth, and that's important in preseason, especially the early rounds. The Patriots, with Tom Brady, is not going to play much, but Ryan Mallett is a guy who has been talked about in trade talks and has talent and is they value quite a bit. And then there's Tim Tebow, who they picked up. Now, say what you want about his strengths and weaknesses, but the guy has seen action in preseason and the NFL, and that's so important, getting experience. That's so important that can translate into preseason. So the Patriots are really loaded. The Houston Texans, Matt Schaub and T.J. Yates. Remember 2 years ago when Schaub was injured, Yates, then the fourth starter, got to see quite a bit of time. And they also picked up Stephen McGee. I mentioned him was with the Dallas Cowboys, seeing a lot of time in preseason last year. Well, they have him along with the youngster Case Keenum. The Saints, who have a chip on their shoulder, presumably for this season. After Drew Brees, you got Luke McCown. We've seen him a lot in preseason and the regular season at times. Seneca Wallace, who seems to have been around forever and is always playing in preseason. And then they got Ryan Griffin. He's a rookie out of Tulane. And finally, the Seattle Seahawks, Russell Wilson, the big star, but Brady Quinn as a backup. High first-round draft pick, and then Josh Portis and Jared Johnson, two guys who have also seen some action. Okay, that'll wrap it up from here. Jeff, you went on that spectacular NBA run, finished 17-5 down the stretch. You can carry that over into NFL preseason. How can folks get aboard?
Well, you don't want to miss out on this. You get the entire preseason, all the five-star players, edge winners, for a grand total of $19. It's a tremendous deal. Don't miss out. Call WSS at 1-866-575-8916. Entire preseason, $19. 1-866-575-8916.
Okay, and Jim Feist has that early bird special for NFL fans, the entire preseason, 4 weeks, including this Hall of Fame game, and his preseason game of the year, 4 weeks for $29 from Jim, 1-866-841-1655. Thanks for joining us. Jeff and Jim Feist will be back next week with another Proline. We're going to be examining the full week 1 of preseason. That'll be on August 8th at 9 a.m. Pacific time, Thursday. We'll see you then, everybody.